Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Plotlines. I'm your host, Connor. And before we get to our episode today, please like, share, comment, and subscribe if you like what we're doing here. Today, I have Jake. He's been on the Avoiding Babylon channel a bunch of times for the trivia show, and he was on last week for my first live stream, which was if it hadn't got off the ground, it would have been a train wreck. But luckily, it did eventually get off the ground. The third try was the charm. But yeah, welcome, Jake.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Interested and excited to nerd out here with you and rile up some people. You can't always, just enjoy yourself all the time.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about sort of the decline of the Marvel Cinematic Universe today, and also since Jake was on the live stream, there was a lot more guests on the live stream, so I'm very excited to talk more. Just a
One
one-on-one,
here.
yeah,
Yeah,
conversation
man. Same.
with you, because it can get chaotic with a bunch of different guests, and it's a lot of fun in that way, but it also can be a handful. But yeah, so we were discussing before the show just sort of what movies we've seen, what TV shows we've seen. So some of them we haven't seen. I not necessarily. Some of them speaking for myself, I didn't watch some of them because I thought they looked like trash, or I just never got around to it. And one of the things I think about Phase, was it 4? I think it's Phase 4, is just that it only certain ones did okay, and that just made me not interested in the ones that I didn't even have any interest in based on who the superhero was. Like, they introduced superheroes that I just didn't care about. Is that
Yeah.
similar to how you went about it?
I mean, kinda. I felt like when I really went through all of them, it was I had a decent amount of time off for paternity. So when the second boy was born, I was just sitting around trying to stay awake, trying to do something, but I had to rock, all this stuff, just parenting things. And so I ended up like wasting a lot of time saying, I want to do the marathon. Let's do it. So, I mean, the child was born in 2020. And I think the lockdowns, coronavirus, all that other garbage stuff kind of changed a lot for me as far as what I do with my time. I've done a lot of reading here recently, which is very good. But like
Confessions,
back
right?
then, yes, got through Confessions. I'm working through currently right now, if it shows up, the Antichrist by St. Robert Bellarmine.
Trans
Translation, yep,
by
by Ryan Grant.
Yeah, a
So,
guest of the show.
yep. But it was just like, so it wasn't that, looking through the list, I wasn't hyped about Black Widow, honestly. The rest of them, I'm kind of like, oh, yeah, sure. I can get kind of behind all these guys because I did do a little bit of comic book reading as a child back in the day. So it was always kind of there. And I really did like the Avengers, growing up. Um, Earth's mightiest heroes, and it was always better than DC. DC was just sad. So Marvel's universe was kind of where I spent my time with it.
Do you
But
mean
you can,
sad, like emotionally sad, or embarrassing regarding like quality?
as far as the comics go, I did not mind them. DC movies are just they're not good. There's been so many Batmans and
Yeah.
the
What
the
about the
newest one.
what about the animation, the animated series? Did you ever watch the animated series?
The only thing I did with animated series, I think, was like Saturday morning cartoons. I would sneak up because my parents would not allow anything that had any sort of violence in it whatsoever. So I had to wake up before they did just to watch and I'm serious, like Sonic the Hedgehog kind of, that stuff was too much. So I had to wake up early just to watch like a little bit of Sonic. I would have been a dead man if they would ever saw like Power Rangers or anything, but I never got into that. But I don't know. So, Batman, DC, stuff like that. Every once in a while, I'd be able to slide one of those in there, but it was just very, very rare. So the only kind of interaction I really had with DC is the movies that have come out, and Justice League. I can't do it's hard for me to get into just as a guy, as a married guy, getting into the woman superheroes now is just really weird to me. I can't do it personally. I'm like, Black Widow, I think it was more of just like, it's on the list, we're gonna do it. But the whole time I'm like, this is just I couldn't get into it at all. It was just weird. And you have the as you probably well know, as we all know as well, the over sensualization that has happened since, Iron Man was even released within 2008 up to now, how it was. But even then, I mean, if you think about it, way back when Iron Man was out, who was Iron Man? He was a playboy guy, and they played that up in the movies. I just don't think I was paying attention to it back then. But now looking back, I'm like, oh gosh, this is PG-13. This isn't PG-13, and I've been through the whole thing. Same with my wife and I just watched the I caught up because you asked me to do this show. So a couple nights ago, we watched
Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, and that one, I mean, there was so much potential, but between like, the language they keep on putting in language and the violence has gotten to such a degree now that I'm like that, when I don't want to do many spoilers, but there's a fight scene.
Would spoil what's
Am I allowed to do spoilers here?
Yeah,
Is that okay?
I mean, we're talking about the decline. I assume people have watched these movies. I mean,
Okay.
especially Doctor Strange came out and is on DVD and stuff. So we can spoil that. And Thor: Love and Thunder, I know you didn't see it, so
I haven't seen it. Have you seen it?
Yeah. Do you mind if I spoil that, or do you want?
You can spoil it. I may or may not get into it.
It's just a heaping pile of garbage.
Of course it is.
So
is Strange. I didn't. Was it worse than Strange or no?
Okay, I think the Strange plot was just stupid or poorly done, but I think Love and Thunder was literally just it was a tonal combination that made no sense. Love and Thunder is literally just a comedy drama, and it doesn't make any sense in context. And when they are supposed to use drama, they undercut it right away. And it's like in Ragnarok, I thought it did it okay, where even when Odin died, you still had a little bit of time to like mourn or whatever. Like they wanted you to mourn that, but there was literally no opportunity for that in this one. And it just doesn't make sense. Christian Bale's a very serious villain in this, but it doesn't mix with the tone of the movie. He's just so serious, but it's just
when has Christian Bale not been serious?
But it's just like doesn't make any sense. Why is Christian Bale the villain of this movie?
Oh man.
Like though oddly enough, there are some decent father moments in that movie, but it's more on the villain side than it is on the hero side, which is kind of funny. But like, it's not like saying fatherhood is bad either. So it's like when the villain makes a good father decision or whatever, in it is seen as a good thing in that part, and it's usually when he's being not a villain, I guess, sort of.
Word from our affiliate, Bishop Sheen Rosaries. You've probably worn through the chain of your cheap plastic rosary. Other rosaries simply can't stand up to the wear and tear of everyday life. Bishop Sheen rosaries are made of solid metal beads and paracord to withstand any condition, and are backed with a lifetime warranty. Upgrade your rosary to a Bishop Sheen rosary made to fit your lifestyle or buy one for a friend. Each rosary sold supplies 2 weeks of food for a school kid in Uganda. You use the exclusive link down below to help support our efforts here at Plotlines. The link will take you to sheenrosaries.com. Be sure to use the code Plotlines10.
But
Right.
he's still the villain of the movie. It's just so weird going like, I don't know if you've heard of sort of that that run of Thor that's sort of female Thor or whatever, or well, it was half female Thor and then half not female Thor. It was
I
I
think so.
can't remember the author of it, but it's not actually bad. I think it's really uncreative that they make Jane Foster Thor or whatever. I think it's just uncreative that you make a female character then be the same, take the name of the superhero who's just, that's his name. His name is Thor because he was named Thor. It's not like a nickname or anything. It's his little
Right.
name. But I think that just is more about selling books. They wouldn't be able to sell books by naming Jane Foster something else. Also, like, I saw Andrew Clavin say this, and I thought it was really accurate. It doesn't make sense for a female to be a superhero unless she has powers. And I think having a super hammer that can do all these different things, that gives you the power of Thor or whatever, makes some sense in the context of, okay, it's altering the makeup of a woman. In some ways, it's making, well, a woman more manly in the sense of power, but like, without losing femininity, because, it's not like changing the personality, it's just changing abilities. At least
Right.
that makes sense to me. Because you could say, even in the context of sort of mystics, in Catholicism, miracles have been done by women. Like, there are female saints who have brought about miracles. With God has done that through them. That's one thing that you can see, but it's because they received help. The impressive thing about a man is just his general strength, his natural strength.
Yep.
So, anyways, but Doctor Strange, back to Doctor Strange, because we were talking about that originally.
Yeah.
I would say it's a chaotic plot where Doctor Strange is just turned into an idiot.
Yeah, I would put it that way. There's a lot more, I think, and I could have easily read into it a lot just because of, when you start getting into, there was something more to Doctor Strange than I felt with other Marvel movies. One, and for a couple of reasons personally, I feel like when you started bringing in the Darkhold and the witchcraft,
Mm-hmm.
and what did they call it? Sleepwalking, whatever
Yeah,
it
like
was.
walking into somebody else's
Daywalking,
brain.
like you've possessed somebody.
Yeah.
And then when they're like, hey, make sure you keep me here just in case the souls of the damned come after me, and they're going to be upset because I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing, really bad.
Which doesn't make sense, because why are the souls of the damned upset with somebody doing bad things?
Also true.
That doesn't make any sense.
Or it could make sense in the fact of, even amidst natural bounds, the souls of the damned still have to play with, are still within the realm of reality, and the fact that they know somebody is doing something that is completely and utterly unnatural, which is,
I still think they would be okay with it.
possessing a dead body. Oh yeah, very well could be.
But
It could have
because
just been the
it's
plot.
more like, maybe it was jealousy. They were like, well, it would make sense if it was demons instead of souls, or like just like, I mean, maybe that's kind of more what
But
they
that's
were.
what it is. really. That's what they are.
Oh, but like a soul, a damned soul wouldn't be able to really do that.
The souls of the damned versus demon. Yeah, okay.
It would be more of a demon that would be able to do that. And you could make me think about it as the demon was just jealous because that's what they want to do. They're
That's
like,
true.
you know, you could play it up in the sense of jealousy more than anything else.
That's
But
true.
you'd think an angel would be more upset.
Right. Yep. There was just that the couple for the lady. Like, why did that have to be in there? Doesn't have to be
Oh
in
yeah.
there.
That's for the message, as the critical drinker does.
Jeez. Like,
I-
it's just completely unnecessary.
It was also just illogical, but also,
Yeah.
but it was in a similar context of the lady showing up to this other world and being like, "Oh, you don't know, like you don't have to pay for anything in this world." You
Oh
know?
yeah, they really pushed it farther.
But
Oh,
then
your world?
but then you actually had to.
Yep.
But like
Exactly.
that wasn't even the logic of that world. I thought that was actually quite funny. I thought that was like a big slap in the face to that argument. It's like, no, literally, you're the one who's insane.
Yes.
Though,
Yep.
though I felt Doctor Strange was really mean to Bruce Campbell's cameo.
Oh yeah, and he had to do 3 weeks. 3
Yeah,
weeks just
kidding.
punched in the face like that just because he said, "Hey, you need to pay for that."
Yeah, that was so stupid.
What?
Like Doctor Strange is he even says he's doing something bad. Like when he talked about like the souls of the damned coming after him, it's because he knows he's doing a bad thing,
Correct.
and you can't do a bad thing to
Yep.
for good like you can't to get good consequences. You can't do bad things, and it actually
Yep.
does come back to haunt him in the end.
Yes.
He is possessed by the
Correct.
end of the movie, basically.
Yep.
So
And you're
just
right about the whole plot line just being just terrible.
he just
Like,
played himself.
he played himself, but the whole him playing himself was bad, and then Wanda taking on everybody, killing everybody just to be with these fake children she created in another universe.
But
and then
somehow
when she finally
they make it sound like I've heard this argument that the director of Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness didn't know what was going to happen during during WandaVision. Does that make sense?
Okay.
That he may not know, he may not have known what the plot of WandaVision was. Just that these different characters were in play in WandaVision.
Interesting.
Because I've heard this. I didn't finish WandaVision, but I've heard that it basically, and you can tell us because you have watched it. Does it seem disconjointed from where Wanda ends in WandaVision to where she begins in the Doctor Strange movie? Like, is she cool?
I would say that because it's been a bit since I've seen WandaVision, so I'd have to go to review it. But I feel like at the end of WandaVision, she had kind of made peace with everything. Like, we're good here. I really messed up here. I took over an entire town's mind and forced them into this. And then I beat the other witch that I created because I have too much power. I'm just gonna go just avoid the world now, which I thought was what she was doing. But then Strange showed up and she's in this orchard, which
She
was
destroyed.
just a facade that she destroyed to look like hell and be like, I'm actually coming after, I need my children back. And we're like, no, that's not how you left. I'm almost positive that's not how she left it.
Which is hilarious because Vision was the one that I thought she loved, and that was her big gripe, but she actually ended up not really caring about Vision because all she wanted
and in the
was children.
she recreated Vision,
Mm-hmm.
and then Vision, and then in WandaVision they created another Vision to go after the Vision, and the Vision was just this figment of Wanda's imagination.
Yeah.
And then he ended up like telling the Vision that came over to come after him, like, actually, no, you have choices and you can choose what to do and you're going to be a good person or thing, whatever it is. I can't remember what happened after those guys duked it out because Vision ends up, dying again because he's already dead.
That's funny.
But yeah, I feel like she left WandaVision almost not completely at peace, but like going to go figure it all out. Like by herself now. I'm not gonna, take over a town and make it a sitcom anymore. Vision's gone. These children that she was just pregnant with one day, and the next day she had them, and then the next day they were teenagers. She made them up and she's moving on. And then we get into Multiverse of Madness, and it's like, I am going to do everything I can to get my children back. And Vision, you took everything from me. I don't even know who you are. It's like,
But like it's it's the fact that they don't know what they're doing with
Right.
their right hand versus their left hand.
right.
Like they just don't know. I think the director didn't know what was going on. And probably they still don't care what happens in TV shows.
Yep. I think so too.
They also, have you seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
I have.
Okay, so that's what you know where the Darkhold was from.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, that was a weird thing for me. I was like, okay, I've seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Why is the Darkhold there? Where did it end up at the end of like that?
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I have no idea where that ended up because I have no recollection of that.
Yep. Man, it's been a bit since it was a while.
It
That
was
was a few years ago, I feel.
and I didn't finish the last like 2 seasons or whatever because I thought it was
I may not have.
getting stupid.
Right. Always a shame. Which these movies as well, it just keeps on. I feel like, you go back into it was kind of fun superhero stuff like that, but as time progresses and as the society completely declines, so too that is reflected within film.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of times, language, the more F-bombs just being thrown and stuff, even with PG-13,
Yeah, well, PG-13, the rule I believe is you get 1 F-bomb.
One now.
That is the rule. Well,
Get
I
that. There's blasphemy, all that stuff.
oh yeah. I mean,
That's getting worse.
the thing that disappointed me actually most about Doctor Strange was just how they they destroyed all these characters that they brought in from an alternate reality and then just kind of threw them away. Like Mr. Fantastic, I thought it was actually cool to see Jim from The Office play Mr. Fantastic and see Professor X and stuff like that. I thought that was interesting if they had done anything with the characters.
Yep, I agree.
You need to do something with them. They killing them all just for giggles, basically. That was kind of that's what it felt like. Was just ridiculous.
Yeah. And the way they went to how they killed them, that's when it went from a PG-13 to an R at that point. When the first guy, when she muffled him.
Yeah. Oh,
went.
So I thought that was the most creative death that they come up with. The other ones were stupid. But
right. It was creative, but at the same time,
but you wouldn't have known that made sense unless you knew who Black Bolt was.
Correct.
Which doesn't make sense because nobody knew who Black Bolt was.
Yep.
How do you do this? Why?
Who brings that went
characters?
to a next level of graphic to me at that point.
Yeah.
Seeing him go like that, I was like,
that was weird.
I stopped. I looked at my wife. I'm like, did they seriously just do that in a PG-13? Who?
I'm sorry I made you watch that.
No, you're good.
I'm just kidding.
It's a vetting process at this point.
It's just a wild, right? Also, they, just having female Captain America and basically black Captain Marvel.
I thought that was the same actress that played in the Marvel movie.
In Captain Marvel?
Yeah, in Captain Marvel, it was co-pilot.
Her friend, yeah.
Right?
Which I
thought it was the same person.
Looking back on Captain Marvel, I almost think they were trying to do Top Gun, but with women. And I just realized how stupid that is.
Yep.
Top Gun is probably the best movie as of late that has come out. Other than I think just in film in general, except for maybe the Spider-Man movie. Let's actually talk about a bright point. Did you like Spider-Man? What was it?
Far From Home.
Is it no, not Far From Home.
There was Spider-Man
What was the last one?
Homecoming,
No, that was the first one.
Spider-Man Far From Home, No Way Home.
No Way Home. Yeah.
No
Did
Way
you
Home.
like that movie?
I enjoyed No Way Home. There was a lot going on. Seeing Tobey Maguire in his old Tobey Maguire, still terrible actor state was fantastic for me. It's just, I think, I know it's sad, but seeing Tobey back on screen as Spider-Man, as this old dude who has not changed in any way, shape, or form since he did the Spider-Man movies was just great for me.
That's funny. Yeah. And then I thought it was an entertaining movie. I didn't think it had much heart. I don't think any movie really has much heart these days.
Right.
And that's just because you need morality to have heart. And since the movies generally don't have morality, they can't have heart. And it was the only good Marvel movie that they've made recently because it wasn't made by Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
It was made by Sony,
Mm-hmm.
who actually wants to make money.
Yes.
Marvel has stopped wanting to make money. That's the secret ill of Marvel movies recently.
Yeah, I would say that because there was a point, I think, with you had all the Spider-Mans together, and you were talking about, even with the Thor
Love and Thunder.
Ragnarok, were you able
Oh,
to,
no.
or even Ragnarok, were you able to kind of grieve there?
Yeah.
So too, when Aunt May dies in No Way Home, and then the other Spider-Mans are all just like, bro, we've already been through this. And like, the thing for me, when they were talking about it, I was able to see the other deaths from all the other movies
Mm-hmm.
all at the same time there. And I was like, whoa, that was a lot. That was a lot, guys. That was good. All right.
Yeah.
That was good. You got me on that one. I wasn't
Yeah.
ready for that.
No, it's just it had a lot more heart, because they had a lot of movies to pull from, which is kind of interesting. But they also they gave their main character heart. And even though some of the logic didn't make sense, I think the whole thing about fixing the supervillains and sending them back, I thought was ridiculous, because they were just going to be sent back to the time they died. I mean, I guess that's saving their soul, but it's not saving. And like that, I guess, is the only admirable part of it. Is
Right.
like it for them, since they don't have any real spiritual understanding of what saving a soul means. Which, the thing is, if the problem is something you can fix, like with science, it's not them making the choice. So their souls aren't actually in danger anyways.
Yeah.
Like the only one who might have been actually in danger soul-wise might have been Electro.
Mm-hmm.
Because his mind didn't really change. He was just a jerk. He just became a jerk because he was lonely.
Right.
And then he had power, and then he became a jerk. But
Yep.
I don't think he ever had a mental change, because at the end of the movie, even when he changed, when his superpowers were like were fixed, when he lost his superpowers, he didn't really it's not like he became a different person.
Right.
He just realized, oh, now I don't have power over you, so I guess I have to be good.
Yeah.
Which is stupid. It's like, you didn't change, dude. You didn't. Like, you just it's like if you have Napoleon, without an army and guns around him, I think he's gonna comply. Like,
Very true.
That's the same thing.
Yep.
Like it's not different. But like with Doc Ock, he was mentally like being controlled by the arms.
Yeah.
With Green Goblin, he was psychotic.
Right.
Sandman didn't really seem to have any problems, did he?
He was just he was back and forth.
Which also didn't make sense.
He just kind of goes, yeah, he just kind of goes with the flow and stuff. I think my biggest thing with No Way Home was the fact that Strange just decided to cast a spell without like telling Spider-Man, like, no, there was no implications whatsoever. He was just like, I want to do this. He goes, sounds good, let's do the spell. He goes, wait, everybody's gonna, well, what about my Aunt May? What about my best friend? What about my girlfriend?
you?
Also, he's like, oh, throw it all in there. And it's like, what are you doing, Strange? Why would
He just became an idiot.
Yes, which set him up for the multiverse of madness
For
because
being an idiot again.
Yeah, he was just an idiot.
This is what happens with like mentor older male characters in the Marvel universe. They have to become idiots, otherwise there's no use of anybody else. At least
Right.
that's the writer's perspective, I think, because the writers are really bad at writing. If they were good at writing, they would be able to use those things to an advantage of storytelling, in which, okay, maybe Doctor Strange is captured, and then Peter has to make all these stupid decisions. Like the
Right.
whole point would be somebody else. They can't be the catalyst of by making stupid decisions if they're already very smart and have learned not to make stupid decisions.
Right.
Like, okay, so I would say the downfall, and I was looking at different scenes. I didn't watch the whole of this movie recently. I mean, I watched it when it came out. Endgame. I think Endgame was the beginning of the end, literally, of the quality of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Infinity War was probably the peak of sort of quality, and Endgame was sort of the beginning of the downfall, because they decided that, okay, Thor just failed. Okay, now he's gonna be fat. Like that was their instincts regarding Thor. They were like, okay,
That ticked me off so much.
we have to make him fat because he's obviously going to become gluttonous after he fails. Even though his mother had just wait, no, that was an Endgame. His mother did give him a pep talk then. Even though he had just learned to be a king. That was his whole arc between the three movies, from the first to Ragnarok, was how to be a king. And even at the end of Endgame, he gives up his crown. And then he has to go right back to square one and figure out where he is. He has to try and figure out what he is still in Love and Thunder. And the only thing he comes to...
Are you serious?
Yeah. The only thing he comes to is, I love Jane, and I guess I'm gonna be a father because Christian Bale dies and I have to raise his kid. What?
Which
That's it? Also, he gives a bunch of children the power of Thor to save the day as an Deus Ex Machina. Which, if he had that ability to do that previously, why did he never do that during Endgame or Infinity War? He just looks like an ass.
Yep.
Like,
and
okay.
even with Endgame, getting Thanos in the chest, I mean,
You mean Infinity War?
Sorry, yes, Infinity War. Like you
should have gone for the head.
Yeah, but I mean, like he would have.
Yeah,
He's this crazy warrior. He would have either gone for the head or we would have chopped off his arm.
Yeah,
I'm like,
why didn't he
what is this whole like, oh, just get him in the chest and like, I told you, you would die for that. He goes, you should have got. It's Thanos, man. You know better than this.
Now you're advocating for a greater violence.
But I will say, as far as, I guess, you were talking about No Way Home for favorites. I think that Thor Ragnarok had to be one of the most. It was just funny to me through and through. The comedy in it was good. There wasn't a lot of like sensuality that you see in the other movies, and the swearing was light, I guess. It wasn't like
Yeah.
crazy.
I think the reason for that is because, or not just necessarily the language, but all the other things. I think it's because
Right.
it was a buddy comedy.
Yeah. Had to
And
go to it.
and the
A buddy
comedy was
comedy.
comedy was between a really like intellectual professor, basically Bruce Banner, and a sort of a warrior, and that was
Yeah.
sort of like a noble warrior. Thor is not like just some barbarian.
Right.
He's supposed to be a prince.
He's the god of thunder, lowercase.
Yeah, lower.
And seeing him actually like
Be a
just
king.
touch some of that pure raw power.
Oh, yeah.
Finally, after watching the Thors since what the first one came out, 2011,
Where he loses
2017
his
now we've
power,
seen it. Yep.
and then he, like having his power taken away by Odin, and then eventually for him to sort of embrace his power, yeah, as well as his leadership of the Asgardians, is just it's a good story and it's a good ending, but you can't have good endings in Marvel movies these days. And I don't even think you need a good ending in the sense of the character needs to be done. It just needs to be. You can't send the character back into despair every single time. Mostly because that's not how humans work. I know he's not a human, but that's not how humans work. Humans don't just go, like, they don't fall literally back into the same problem and not understand how to get back. Once you learn a lesson, you may fall into the same frustrations or emotions or something, but to fall into the exact same situation is just bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in movies, because no one wants to see that. No one wants to see somebody fall into the exact same situation they just were in, because it's boring.
Correct.
It's like, I've seen this movie. You just told me the story.
Yes. Yep.
Could you imagine a bedtime story like that? Like just telling a kid like this story.
Same thing over and over again.
Yeah, it's like, I think that would get boring.
We're going to do the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but we're only going to do the last battle part at the end of the book, and we're just going to do that on repeat. Okay.
They don't
bud?
even don't even talk about the last battle part.
I know. It's like a paragraph long.
Yeah, it's like a
in
paragraph
the book.
long. We're just gonna read.
And everybody got together and they fought, and Aslan came off and bit off the witch's head, and everyone was like, "Dude!"
Whoa!
And that was that. That was it. But the movie had to really draw that scene out. Like, really had to draw that out.
I think the movie of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe did it pretty well, though.
I will agree with that.
I think they didn't lean as much as they did in the second one on Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
They leaned way too much on Lord of the Rings in the second one, which really takes away from the whole thing. Maybe we'll have to do a movie look at
yeah, we could do
the Narnia
Lord of the
movies.
Rings, Narnia.
I'm
not going to be going through. I will say I am not going to be watching Amazon's Ring of Power, though. I refuse to watch that. I'm not going to do it.
You're a good man. I admire you. I think I might have to, only for the sake of trashing it.
You're going to have to do like so here's a new rule and philosophy that I have to do for myself personally now before I go into movies, because of I hate going into a movie if I know there's going to be anything really sexual in it. If there's going to be sex in it, then I'm like, I'm done. I don't need to see that. So I do a parent's guide prior to watching a movie, and I go straight to, violence score, stuff like that. As sad as it is, I'm desensitized to it. But the sensual stuff, if there's something in, parent's guide, there's this one sex scene, I'm like, all right, I don't need to see this, then I'm good. I'll go waste my time watching something else.
The
But I have heard with the Rings of Power there is some nudity in it because it's Amazon, and of course, those who have read the Silmarillion know that
all the nudity.
the
Well, actually,
Beleriand is just full of just nude elves running around. As soon as somebody said that to me, they're like, "Yeah, it's gonna be like a oh, what's that one with the dragons? The winter is coming."
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, never watched it, but they're trying to be kind of like a Game of Thrones / Silmarillion type thing, and I'm like, that's here.
That
I'm
doesn't
done.
make any sense.
I don't want to. Nope, I'm out.
I
I'm not doing it.
I've heard conflicting things about that.
Yeah,
I've heard that they're trying actually to go through for the largest audience possible, so they're not doing that. But
interesting.
I could be wrong. They could just be lying and talking out of two sides of their mouth, because they do that a lot. They've also been saying that it's not going to be political, but all they talk about is the political aspects of
The
it.
political aspect of it. Oh,
So,
man.
it's not political, but all we're going to do is advertise the politics.
Yep.
But
Yep.
anyways, Marvel.
Right. It's degraded. It's gotten worse.
So Ragnarok's your favorite, even though it's not. That's phase 3. You got to pick a phase 4. What's your favorite phase 4 movie?
Phase 4. I was gonna say, by the way, the worst of them all is Age of Ultron. I think Age of Ultron was the absolute worst. Yep.
Okay.
The whole making Ultron kind of anti-theistic, not just, yeah, I mean, like that he could have been worse, I guess, but there were just the things that he was saying and just completely ripping God down. Like just the words coming out of his mouth. I'm like, I don't like that at all. I don't.
He was the villain.
I know that. I understand.
Are you sure you know that?
Yeah, he's the villain, but still the fact that it's out there, and as well as I do, you have the nerds out there that really cling on to the good things, and you have the nerds out there that really cling on to the bad things. So some weirdo nerd out there is going to be clinging like, I love Ultron, and he really hates God, so I'm going to hate God. And I'm like, see, I have issues with that.
Which is interesting, because he's supposed to be the bad parts of Tony Stark in that movie. He's supposed to be the personifications of Tony's weaknesses or failures. So you could argue that it's showing that his worst parts is that he thinks of himself as higher than God.
Which Tony probably did.
And then he has to kill that part of him.
Yeah.
I don't think
I'm just saying I didn't like it. Gave me bad vibes. I don't think it was
a great movie either, but I think it was more because it was a hodgepodge of just like too much.
That is true.
Like that's
Who brings in Quicksilver and then kills him right away? Why would you do that to a speedster right away?
It's the same logic of bringing in Mr. Fantastic and then turning him to jelly.
Oh gosh. Yes. Well, that one got me. It was like, oh cool. We're finally gonna have a speedster within the Marvel universe. And this guy's actually pretty decent. I like obviously, as you can see from my background, I like, if there is anything with DC, the Flash is my homeboy.
Yeah, you were complaining about DC, but then you got
that's the thing. DC, yeah, but the Flash, I've always liked fast things. As a child, I wanted to be as fast as I possibly could, and that was it. The Flash, who is that the kid's name in The Incredibles? Flash?
No.
First, what is his name? Whatever that kid's name is in the Incredibles movie. Like growing up and see that, I'm like, is it Flash? No. Flash.
No, it's
Robert Parr.
Bob.
Dash.
Dashel
Robert Parr. There you go.
Dashel. Is that a real name, or is that just?
I don't know.
And when I
really
real,
like the fast stuff.
when I mean real, I mean, was that like, does that have like deeper origins than like 50 years? That's what I
have
want
no
to know.
idea.
Uh,
I'm just saying the fact that they brought into a speedster onto the scene and then they killed him off right away and then let Hawkeye live. I'm like,
I like
fine.
Hawkeye.
I do like Hawkeye. Hawkeye with the whole family aspect and everything.
Yeah,
He's got to
he's
be
the
one of
only
the.
family man.
He's like a decent dude, minus the whole like I mean, I don't know. That's something that I've grappled with watching after Infinity Wars, and his family's completely taken away from him, and he's just completely lost.
Why
He's
didn't they make
completely lost.
Why didn't they make a show about that? That would have been kind of cool.
That would have been crazy. It would have just been hate, kill, kill, kill.
Well,
That's all
okay,
he did.
here's my
But
pitch.
it was all bad guys.
Here's my bitch. You have it be him and Daredevil. You
Which
have
okay,
the,
we did watch Daredevil,
you have the
that
Catholic.
series.
You have the Catholic dealing with the grief obsessed superhero. That's my pitch. So
Okay.
they can't understand Catholicism. They can't. The Marvel can never do Matt Murdock right because they don't get the fact that this is what all of Hollywood and all of like cinema doesn't understand. Catholics aren't pacifists.
Right.
Like that's not a thing. You can't make it into one. We have fought wars.
Correct.
We are not pacifists.
Correct.
Which also means we're not like against the death penalty, and we're not against. We're just not against justice. We are for justice. God himself is known as the Avenger. He's an Avenger. He's the Avenger, actually.
Yes.
I
Which
think
also
that's in some
okay.
translation of the Bible.
And then going back to No Way Home, having Matt Murdock just appear.
Yes, that was so epic.
Oh, it was so good, but then I'm like, why didn't you incorporate it more? They need to.
I think it was okay. I thought it was like
It
I thought it was
was
hilarious.
kind
Like, yeah, I'm a pretty good lawyer. Didn't he say that?
Yeah, I'm
like,
pretty good. That just like stops the brick. Goes, like I said, I'm a pretty good lawyer.
Literally I think that's what it is. I don't know. Maybe I'm making that up in my head. But that was the best part because the funny thing was no one knew who he was. Like half the audience probably didn't know who he was because not everyone's seen Daredevil because it was on Netflix. But just so like Matt Murdock's character is probably the best. I didn't like I didn't like some of the Daredevil because it just got too gory. It got too gruesome for me at different parts, and I wanted more faith part into it. Catholicism to any atheist is basically just a comfort, like that, like which no Catholic is a Catholic for comfort. Like I know no Catholic that is like, this is comforting to me. That is why I keep with the faith. No, it's difficult. It's hard to be a Catholic. You don't be you're a Catholic because you believe it's right. Because everything else would be so easy if you didn't believe that it was right. It'd be easy but terrible.
Correct.
Like life is easy when you have no morals, but it is also incredibly evil and destructive to yourself. You will destroy yourself and then you will become unhappy. But you will then blame the world and not,
Right. Because because sin blinds.
Exactly. It is
completely blinds you.
It's this which works for Daredevil.
Also true.
He's blind.
Blind Catholic, super heightened, sensed, crazy man.
Yeah.
Beats the living jar out of people.
Yeah, especially criminals.
Exactly.
Yeah. Could you imagine if he existed in real life? Because he'd just be beating up Antifa.
I don't know.
He'd be
I don't know.
defending churches. He'd be out there
That's true.
defending churches, hunting
Imagine
down
Antifa showing up to a church and just having this
Daredevil.
dude in just red with his mask over him, just standing there with a couple of spikes in his hand. Like, go ahead, I
And they-
dare you.
And they would try because they would be the stupid people who would be like, "Oh, it's just this guy." Like,
Yeah, it's just a guy.
it's just
And then
one
like
guy.
the first two guys get completely knocked out, and the rest of them are like,
Uh,
"What the heck, man?" And then
Why
they
would you
all come
do
at him, and it's
that?
just 50 people down and flat out. Oh
Then
man.
he just disappears.
Yeah, you're right.
And
That series was a wee bit bloody and gory, and
Yeah.
Elektra made it a little.
Yeah.
Didn't like the whole Elektra stuff.
But it's interesting because it is his temptation. That's
Correct.
she
The
symbolizes
internal
his,
conflict and the Catholicism sewn throughout constantly.
I swear, if Marvel hired me to write a movie, it'd be a great movie. Like, even if they just let me plan something, they could write it. But like, they just let me plan this stuff. I've been planning things since high school. I've been imagining what I would do with these superhero characters. If anyone gave me the opportunity to do it, it would be so good.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, but like it'd be something like that, like Daredevil with just an actual understanding of Catholicism, because
Yes,
it would be actually interesting,
it would be.
and it wouldn't be like pansy. And like that's the thing, is like violence in of itself is not a it's not a deterrent of a Catholic. He's not him battling his demons would not be him battling his willingness to fight. Like that's a perfectly valid thing. I mean, we could talk. I don't really know. I'd have to figure out the morals of vigilante, vigilante stuff. But especially, it'd be one thing if the government was not protecting people. Like, I think that would make vigilantism more valid morally. Maybe I'd have
Yeah.
to figure that out. That's one of the things I've been trying to figure out as I've sort of thought more about superheroes in from a Catholic perspective.
Well, taking matters into their own hands.
If you're not
If
killing them,
the-
I guess
if you're not killing them, and if your entire justice system is utterly corrupt, you're run by tyranny. I mean,
especially if
if
you're
you
purely
think about it,
defensive.
right, it comes to defensive. And if you think about it, if our tyrannical overlords at some point decide to really get serious and physical with stuff, and we start fighting
just-
back, isn't that technically a little bit of vigilantism within all of us then?
Or just slightly, or even not even like aggressive with us, but just passive. Like if the person breaks the law, but the government doesn't arrest the person for it, is it vigilantism when you defend yourself against someone who's breaking the law? No, probably
If
not.
you're defending yourself against them, now actively going out and seeking people.
Yeah, well, that would be the thing, is like, are you defending others? Because you could also make the argument you're defending others, not necessarily defending yourself. And that, you're able, I mean, that would be under the same jurisdiction. Again, if you don't kill them, that sort of thing. It just reminds me of Bishop, what is it? What's that? Have you heard the story of, what is it? Dagger John, Bishop Dagger John of New York?
I have not.
He basically, this was during the sort of Know Nothings. Are you familiar with the Know Nothings? Back in the 1800s.
Mm-mm.
They were just a anti-Catholic, anti-immigrant party that wanted to, save the United States for Anglo-Saxon Protestants, that sort of thing. So there was a big riot in Pennsylvania where they burned down, I think they burned down a church, or they attacked a bunch of Catholics. And then the bishop in Philadelphia was basically like, we need to learn how to get along with our Protestant brethren or whatever. which is like really embarrassing. But then the New York bishop went to the mayor of New York, who was a know nothing, who had just been elected, and said, if there is one church that is attacked in New York City, it will become a new Moscow. And Moscow had just been burned to the ground. That's why. So basically, he threatened if there was a riot like they did in Philadelphia, that all hell would break loose. And he also had veterans from like the Civil War, I think it was the Civil War, begin training the young Catholics to prepare for defense.
Okay.
So
I'll check it out.
So it reminds me really about that kind of story.
I got you.
Where maybe we can take some inspiration from, if we're looking at that. But yes, defensive is obviously the most, makes the most sense on that level. But this is really just looking at superheroes and looking at if they could work in real life.
Right.
I mean, it's unlikely to work in real life just because superpowers don't exist in real life, so it doesn't.
Right.
Money does. So Iron Man could. Batman technically could in some sense.
Batman. Yeah.
Not really Batman, because he's
there's got to be some sort of test out there to see if you could replicate like a Daredevil type thing. They're like, all right, we got a blind guy. We're gonna teach him like Krav Maga and see if the senses are really heightened. Give him the time. I don't know. Maybe
but like,
possible.
Isn't the point of heightened senses in a blind person only after they've become blind? It's compensation.
Right. Yep.
So it wouldn't you'd have to figure out how to heighten senses even more than normal heightened senses.
Speaking of other heightened senses, have you seen the what were the cartoon Spider-Mans called?
Spectacular?
No. They had a cartoon Spider-Man that just came out.
Oh, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
There we go. Into the Spider-Verse. Did you see that one?
I did, yes.
What did you think of that one?
I always think the idea of Miles Morales as Spider-Man is just boring, but I did like the movie. Like the movie was good, but I always think it's just sort of, again, lacks creativity.
Okay.
The multiverse part is creative. And since Miles was a multiverse version, as long as he's not the mainline Spider-Man, it makes sense. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no. That works.
I just think it lacks creativity. If you're gonna, because it just makes me think that they wanted to make a black Mexican, like half African American, half Mexican American, superhero. Well, yeah, make it that. Sure, go ahead. That might be interesting.
Yeah.
But you don't need it to be Spider-Man. I get the whole multiverse part, and that's kind of the point of it, and that's where Miles Morales comes from anyways. He was always a multiverse character originally. Once in the comics they brought him into the main universe, I just think it's stupid. But anyways, in its use in the movie is quite good, and I thought it was an actually very good depiction of family, and if I remember correctly. And I thought all the different ones, except for like the Japanese Spider-Man sort of girl, whatever.
Yeah.
Other than that one, I thought they were all really interesting, and Nicolas Cage as a Spider-Man I just thought was hilarious.
A noir Spider-Man. I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
That's just hilarious. What'd you think about it?
I would agree spot on with all that, honestly. I wouldn't have any other commentary outside of that. It was entertaining, and yeah, that's I don't know if I'll see the next one, but
is there a new one coming out?
Yeah, they got another one coming out. It's like second, I don't know what it's called, into the multiverse or something, you know.
I
'Cause
do want to
names
say
are hard.
one thing to like to people who are interested in some level of diversity amongst like culture. I think that's fine. I think you need to be creative with it. If you want to tell a superhero or any character from a different cultural perspective or just culture in itself, I think the problem with a lot of Americans when they do that is they tend to just take what is known as sort of the liberal culture of said society and just enforce it upon that culture. Like it'd be weird to make like just like you make a Latin American superhero or something, but he's super gay or like he's really liberal or like stuff like that, very anti-Catholic or something, very anti-religion or something. Like I'm guessing I would assume there are those people that exist out there, but that's not summing up Latin American culture by any means. I mean, that's just
Right.
I mean, Latin American culture is rooted in Catholicism.
Right.
That is one of the bright parts of sort of the American continents, is that the even though Spanish America has become so corrupted because their governments are so terrible, they are still incredibly Catholic in sort of instincts, in
Yeah.
devotion.
That's true.
I mean,
It's
Spanish.
there. It's there, but I think too that, the world, being within the world and the culture is so diverse, and there's so much going on in the world. There's so much evil in the world. Even the cultures, it's hard to find a good, fully Catholic culture on a global scale nowadays. You don't hear it too much.
I think
I know it's out there.
I think the closest ones might be in maybe, I would guess, Croatia,
Poland's getting up there.
Hungary and Poland.
Yep.
Those would be my three, even though I think Croatia just overruled their own people in legalizing gay marriage. So I think that happened recently. But that wasn't I'm pretty sure that was not like the people, that was the government itself. After they already had a referendum, I think, on it. So
Yeah.
So it's sort of an opposite to like Ireland, which did the opposite. Referendums on both, and both of the Catholic positions fell away pretty quickly. But those three countries, I would say Eastern Europe is probably the most religious outside of South America.
Okay.
I would say South America and Eastern Europe are probably the most religious Christian areas.
Okay.
But anyways,
beats us here in the U.S.
Yeah, the U.S. is trash, but it always was, in my opinion.
Correct. We're working on a book right now called The Star-Spangled Heresy.
You mean reading it?
Right. We're reading. I can see how that could be misconstrued.
You're lucky that I know that book exists.
I know, right? I just said that like, obviously everybody knows about this. I'm like, I just found out about this book like a month or so ago, and I started reading it, and I think we're in it because I'm reading it out loud with my wife and this could be a topic for a completely other day, but as you know of the book, everything that I was taught, in history growing up is, I have a lot of questions, we'll put it that way. So this is really opening up some eyes.
Maybe I'll read it, and maybe me and Charles can talk about it, because I think I think it's Solon Church is the author. I think, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
It
And I
rings a bell.
think she's dead. If I might be wrong, but I think she's no longer with us on Earth. But so I think, and I'm pretty sure him and her were friends. So I think he might be the best person to.
Yeah, she passed away in 2015.
Yeah, so I think those two are he might be the best person to talk about it with, and I think it'd be a cool conversation. But
That could be good.
But superheroes.
Yes, getting back to the decline of the Marvel universe.
What's the worst
Not that
movie?
it was ever even in an incline anyways. I mean, it's comic books.
It was an incline of quality.
Yeah. Yes.
But it mirrored the culture in sort of the level of quality that you could possibly get.
Right. And it's all for straight up entertainment, and that's it. I mean, even the comic books, like going back and reading the comic books, it was just it's a fantasy. It was a release. It was a way to get away from something.
Don't be mean to fantasy. Tolkien's fantasy.
I know, but like Tolkien's fantastic and like has meaning and purpose, and there's greatness there. And I was, oh, dude, my wife was rolling the other night because I don't know what the context was. I can't remember the context, but I had to look up the different trees within.
Oh yeah. What is it? In the Silmarillion, Laurelin
Yep.
and what's the other one?
Telperion, I think.
Telperion. Yeah.
Telperion, yep. So, but
you
it
had
wasn't even
to look
those.
that up?
It was the white tree of Gondor.
Gondor and Numenor. They also
Yes, and Numenor. And that's what I was looking for, because somebody like started following me on Twitter, and that tree, that symbol, was their profile picture. And I kept on drawing a blank. I'm just like, only a nerd knows or puts this tree on their profile picture. This person must be somewhat decent. I scrolled through and stuff, but then I couldn't get it out of my head. So we're getting ready for bed, and I'm on my phone, and my wife's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm looking for different trees." And she was just like, "What?"
What?
And I'm like, "Yeah, there's this symbol," and I started like going into the symbol and stuff as far as the trees, and then all the different trees within Middle Earth and Beleriand, and she couldn't comprehend it, and she just started laughing. She goes, "I can't even focus on trees on this Earth. You're saying this dude puts symbolisms into trees in his writings? Are you serious?" And she just couldn't get over it. I'm like, "Well, yeah." And I started like, talking about their meaning and purpose and stuff. She goes, "This is too much. This is me." So, I mean, that was it. It was just me nerding out over the different types of trees within Tolkien's world. And she just couldn't wrap her mind that that's what I was doing.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, no, I one of the things about like nerd stuff, I generally I will focus in on one sort of world at a time, or a few associated worlds at a time, and I will get really into it, that I will start to sort of be able to remember all these different names and all these different characters and stuff like that, and sort of various things from those worlds, and it will just come to me. I don't know if how long I retain that, because I then get off onto different subjects, and then I have to do the same thing with that. I just have a brain that focuses on certain things, then loses interest, then gains interest in something else, and then focuses heavily on that, then loses interest in that, then moves to something else, and then it just eventually comes back around. I will come back on an interest level of I don't remember when I started thinking about superheroes more, just in the last couple months, but I had sort of had an interest, sort of more in the superhero movies and stuff like that. But the problem is just the quality isn't there. I've over the last 5 years, I've learned so much more about the quality of entertainment and quality of storytelling
Mhm.
that storytelling of the Marvel movies, it just isn't enough to draw
Right.
my attention.
I would 100% agree with that. 100%. Because you think of, and that was, I think what opened up my mind there, going off of just storytelling, was I read Timothy Flanders' introduction to the Holy Scriptures for beginners, or whatever it was.
Interesting.
But it was it was Into the Scriptures, and he made a point there as far as where the scriptures come from, the origins, all this stuff. He's like, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, everybody, technically, even the people who couldn't read or write, knew more scripture than the average person does today, because of how important and how part of the culture it was for not just the storytelling, but the oral tradition.
Yeah.
And it was there, and it was something that was worthy, and it was, you listened and you retained it and you talked about it, because that's, that it's what was there. And I would agree with you as far as where the Marvel movies are and stuff, and just the superheroes and things. It's like a light entertainment passing moment. That's about it. That's about it, honestly.
Yeah. I think also just an element of it, of sort of what I've learned about entertainment, is just that entertainment has to come with something else. It has to be, morality has to come through it for it to be satisfying. You have to be drawn in emotionally. And it also has to be, these worlds have to have great depth. And when I mean depth, I don't mean just like like an amazing number of characters. Like, that's the thing. Like, superheroes have this, what's the word? It's like a mirage. You think has great depth because the amount of characters is kind of insane. And that's because so many people have worked on them over the years that they have created characters for for like 30, 50 years, like that type of thing. But
Yeah.
really, when you get into it, it is quite surface level.
Yeah.
Everything's very surface level. The reason they like the characters is because of the parts that aren't surface level, but they can't go that far into them because they just aren't that they there's not enough depth. But like Tolkien and Lewis have maybe in some sense less content, because they just wrote a few books basically, and not like Tolkien has a lot of content, only in the sense that he wrote a lot in the Silmarillion that covered like thousands of years. And you can imagine all of it,
Right.
but it's not necessarily in-depth stories every time. It's
Oh,
like,
no.
okay, what happened in this story that's important? Okay, I'm going to tell you that. It's kind of
Some
more
boats
biblical.
were burned, and that was that.
Yeah, it's like biblical in sort of storytelling. It's not it doesn't involve it. It only gives you what you need to know, not necessarily unimportant details. And that's what fiction is now. Fiction is also plus the unimportant details, which everyone likes because it really draws you in, and it's
Drama.
And I'm not saying don't do that, because that's an important part of fiction. It's just that wasn't the depth that Tolkien needed to go to in the Silmarillion.
Right.
But his depth is more moral. His depth is spiritual. His depth is theme. And Lewis is the same way, to probably a lesser extent, but he is
I
just
would say to a
as
lesser extent.
rooted in theme and meaning and morality, but just geared specifically to children.
Versus the Marvel movies, which are geared towards
Everyone
money.
and no one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And money. Yeah. Money is the ultimate end for them.
Correct. Because it's
And
all 100% secular.
yeah, and it's 100% profitability.
Yep.
and they're starting to tank, so that's nice.
Straight up. Yep. Straight up. Although I did watch a trailer for the Legend of the Ten Rings, and I'm like, that looks interesting. It's just one of those, I probably won't see it because like all the rest of the Marvel movies, everybody knows, at least I knew all those characters from the comic books growing up.
Mhm.
Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, I saw that. I'm like, the heck is that? I don't know what the heck that even is. Same with the Eternals. They're like, oh yeah, this stuff. I'm like, man, now you tried to go super nerd and nobody's that nerd.
You went super nerd in the sense that nobody cares. Not even enough
Right.
nerds care.
Not even enough nerds care versus like, the rings of power that are coming up. The nerds care deeply, either one way or the other. Me, I'm not doing it. Don't even care. But you have others,
What if
yourself,
there's
that will
not
watch it.
sex? What if I'm able to tell you there's no sex?
I don't. They're gonna botch it. Even I mean, like movies have changed, times have changed. I mean, like
just for reviewing
look
sake,
at the first Lord of the Rings. The first Lord of the Rings movies themselves were decent. I would still like if I'm looking for something and I can't think of anything and I do want to sit down and watch a movie or something and the wife's in bed, I'll pop on, the Fellowship or the Two Towers or the Return of the King. Sounds good. I got 3 hours to spare. Let's throw on the extended edition.
3 hours.
But then The Hobbit was just terrible. Oh, like why would you expand this book that you could read in 2 weeks or less? What do you need? You don't need a trilogy here. What's up with the whole love triangle with all these people? And it was so bad.
A mess.
At least with the Lord of the Rings, I feel like they tried, and that could be that's a whole another day, another topic. I'm just thinking that even with time, the Marvel movies, as far as morality and goodness, anything, plot lines, all this stuff, it's all been the same. It hasn't really reached a peak, hasn't really tanked, but it seems like it's really getting down there, really scraping a bottom here now.
I love that you keep mentioning the show name. Keep saying plot lines. It's great. Great advertising.
Good. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I understand what you're going with that. I want to do I'll give my 2 cents about Love and Thunder and then we'll wrap up. So Love and Thunder is basically I mean inherently it starts with just a man who wants to save his daughter, and then his daughter dies and he blames his gods for not saving them or for not saving his daughter. Then he meets his gods and then a sword corrupts him and then he kills his god. So that's Christian Bale's character, basically. He's corrupted by a sword that wants him to kill all the gods. And then he just and then it just skips all the interesting parts, basically, of him hunting down different gods. And that's kind of, and then eventually he shows up on Earth, and Jane Foster is now Thor because Mjolnir. This was actually an interesting way of making Jane Foster Thor, because they had Mjolnir reassemble itself, though that makes no sense in the context of all the other movies. But it reassembles because Thor once told it that to protect Jane Foster. And Jane Foster has cancer, so Mjolnir decides that, okay, I need to protect Jane Foster from cancer, even though it ends up killing her anyways. So that's in a really inconsistency and nonsensical. Okay, I need to protect this woman, but also I'm killing her. Pretty psychotic. Also, it just plays around with the hammers because the Mjolnir is like, Stormbreaker is like jealous whenever Thor is talking to Mjolnir.
Are you serious?
Yep.
Unbelievable.
It's funny once, but they do it way too many times.
They do it a couple times?
Yeah, it's kind of funny the first time.
I don't remember that from the comics. I remember...
I don't think it is from the comics.
Yeah. Okay.
But
That's the other thing too, where I'm like, I'm trying to relate certain things too much to, okay, this is what I saw within the comics,
maybe we'll have to
or
do
this is what
a
I
like
saw even within Saturday morning cartoons, and then they have this whole thing, and I'm like, you guys aren't staying true to anything.
maybe we'll have an episode where we just talk about what actually is comic book stuff. Like what actually makes comic books somewhat like a quality. Like what good qualities do comic books have? Or at least what is interesting about comic books. But anyways, also one of the things about Ragnarok is it was written by Christopher Yost. Do you know who that is?
Rings a bell.
He is a comic book writer, and he wrote an animated Avengers series, which is actually pretty good. So that's why Ragnarok I think was good, because the writer was an actual like superhero writer
Gotcha.
who had experience transitioning the comic books into a different like into film or into like different media types
Okay.
versus basically some ignoramus, which Taika Waititi is basically an ignoramus. I mean, he really does not know what he's doing at all. But anyways, another funny thing, I'm just gonna point out some funny things and then I'll get to more why it's stupid. But there's a moment when Thor shows up to find Lady Sif has like sent a like an emergency beacon or something. And she had fought a big battle against Gore, the God Killer, who's Christian Bale. And but she lost one of her arms in
Didn't she
battle.
die?
No, she wasn't in Ragnarok. She was the actress refused to come back because either because of scheduling or because she knew she was going to get killed, and she was like, yeah, I don't want to come back just to get killed.
And that's what she did then in Thor: Love and Thunder. She just came back just to get killed.
No, she
Or she
didn't.
lost an arm and lived.
She lost her arm, and then she's like, it's okay. I'm gonna go to Valhalla because warriors that die in battle go to Valhalla. You need to die in yeah. And but then Thor's like, but Sif, you're still alive, and it's after battle. You didn't die in battle. And then she swears, and she's like, oh, blank, and and then she's like, and then I just thought that was hilarious. I was like, that's kind of funny. It's like you break it to her like you're technically you didn't die in battle. You've survived.
You're gonna be all right. Just
Yeah,
throw it
and
up
then
in the arm.
and then you're disappointed. She's disappointed that she's still alive and didn't die in battle. Anyways, she gets brought back to New Asgard, which is on Earth, and she heals or whatever slowly or something. I don't know, but that's all. That's pretty much the only thing she's in the movie. Valkyrie is now king, and I say king because she calls herself king.
Okay.
Because so the reason Tessa Thompson is in this movie is Valkyrie, or in the last movie too, is because she's basically dating Taika Waititi, the director.
Mm.
And she's not the only one he's dating. Ugh. Anyways, he's a terrible, terrible human being. But she's also terrible. They're just both really stupid, and whoever gave them the job is really stupid as well. But anyway, so
Yeah.
and they literally said that they had to do so many reshoots because they didn't know what they were doing when they actually filmed the movie. They didn't know how to connect all the dots and how to make the film work. Huh? That's your job. Also, Taika Waititi wrote the script, not Chris Yost. Because if Chris Yost wrote the script, it would have been somewhat comic book, integrated. But no, they can't do that. They can't actually give it to somebody good. Anyway, so the one thing is that Thor, the Thor and Jane Foster thing, that he decides that he needs to not, he needs a reason to live. He needs to find something that's worth living for and not just shield himself off from getting hurt again.
Mm-hmm.
So he decides that he needs to love Jane, Jane doesn't ever outshine Thor really, which is kind of nice. You know, he is still the top dog and he's still the main guy. And Natalie Portman is older than Thor, older than Chris Hemsworth, so she's not like she could never lead a series of her own. She's like there's no reason that she would. But anyway, so Gore kidnaps some of the Asgardian children, and you get to meet Heimdall's son, who has the exact same powers.
Okay.
But he wants to be called something else that his father didn't name him, and Thor and him are arguing about that for a bit, which I thought was stupid. I thought it was kind of a nod towards the transgenderism and stuff like that. I just thought
Gotcha.
children thinking that they have domination over their parents is just stupid. I get Heimdall's
wrong.
dead, but it makes more sense that Heimdall's dead and he's rebelling in that sense, because it's not even like Heimdall can tell him what to do because he's dead. But it's still annoying. It's like, and the name's dumb because there is no such character in Norse mythology. I don't think Heimdall has any kids, or at least well known. But anyways, so
I don't remember.
he communicates using the same way Heimdall communicated with Thor in Ragnarok. Do you remember that part? Where like Thor can see what Heimdall sees?
Yes.
Yeah. So they do that. So he knows where they are. They go chase him. And Gore needs Stormbreaker to get to this get to eternity. Do you know who eternity is?
I don't.
Eternity is like this this being that's like the whole world, the whole universe, or whatever, like a personification of the universe.
Okay.
Like it's literally, it looks like a universe that just walks.
I feel like yeah. Yep.
Anyways, he has to go find eternity, and then apparently eternity will grant one wish, and so Gore's gonna wish that all the gods die. So Thor has to go stop him, but he also needs Stormbreaker to do it for some reason. I don't understand how anyone knows that, but whatever. And also anyway, so Thor decides, okay, I need to go find an army of gods to fight Gore. So he goes to basically Mount Olympus, but not Mount Olympus, because it's like the Mount Olympus for all the gods. And they really do this really cruel thing to Christianity. Korg says, hey, look, it's the carpenter god. You don't see anything, but I'm pretty sure that's what they said. Even though what's funny is kind of Thor is kind of that for Norse mythology. Anyways, but yeah, so that was terrible. But anyways, then you meet Zeus, and he's just kind of a pig, and he has his lightning bolt.
I mean,
that's accurate to
that's accurate.
Or Greek mythology.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically Zeus accidentally strips Thor, which is creepy.
Which is also accurate, probably, for what Zeus was.
Well, he totally was accidental. He was like, Zeus is like, you flicked, or Thor says you flicked too hard. Like with his hands, he just like motioned for like to reveal a disguise Thor was wearing, but it just took out all his clothes. And then all the other people that like Valkyrie and Jane were there, and Korg were there, and they were in disguises too. And Zeus was like ready to take off their disguises, and they're like, "Oh no, we're good, we're taking off our disguises," because they didn't want that what happened to them. But really, no. The problem is, it's just, well, A, you see Thor's butt. That was weird. And B, it's just like,
gotta be there.
If it was done to a woman, it would have been like seen as incredibly demeaning. But for a man, it's not.
Right.
For culturally speaking. Anyways, I just thought that was unnecessary. I just thought it was a terrible use of it was a terrible joke.
Yeah.
And then Thor basically eventually like throws the thunderbolt. I don't remember how he gets it, but he steals Zeus's thunderbolt and throws it right through Zeus. And you think he killed him. So then he steals the thunderbolt, and then eventually Jane is basically like they flee from this place after they kill Zeus, or what they think they killed Zeus. And then what happens is basically Valkyrie gets beat up. I can't remember. She doesn't want to go fight because she thinks she's gonna die if she fights Gore again. And then Jane is being killed by the cancer, and Thor asks her not to go because he doesn't want her to die, and he wants to, wants her to live. Anyway, so he goes by himself to free the kids. He breaks the kids out and gives the kids all these Thor superpowers. He may be using Zeus's thunderbolt to allow him to do it, but it doesn't really, nobody explains it, so it doesn't really make sense. Anyways, Jane decides that she needs to come fight anyways. She breaks Gore's sword. Gore is able to get into Eternity to meet him, but because I think the sword is broken, he's not as corrupted. So he basically just asks for his daughter back
Oh,
instead of to kill all the gods. Jane dies because the cancer
spread.
kills her after she sort of wins and Thor wins. And Thor basically says he'll raise the Gore's child
Okay.
and takes her with him. And that gives him meaning, I guess, which is not too bad. But basically he gives her Stormbreaker, which doesn't make sense, and they go fight together. That's really dumb. But at least and then Jane goes to Valhalla and sees Heimdall.
Why does Jane go to Valhalla?
I have no idea.
Why does Jane go to Valhalla?
She's human. I don't know. Doesn't make
She's
sense.
human. She shouldn't be going to Valhalla.
Yep.
That's for the Asgardians.
Though in the comic book story, I believe she does visit Valhalla when she dies in the comic books. So it's in a way they were mimicking the comic books in that way.
Okay.
At least that's something. Like, at least they were following something there. But in that story, I think she comes back anyways right away. But anyways, so she goes to, or maybe she might stay. I can't remember. But anyways, so long story short, that's how it sort of ends. And Valkyrie and Sif are training the little kids to defend themselves, and that's kind of how they end it all. So it really ends right back where it started, but they don't really get
Okay.
very far.
I'll think about seeing it.
Yeah, it's just not funny enough to be Ragnarok, and it doesn't have enough heart like Ragnarok. And I even think Ragnarok, though it was funny at first, I don't really like watching it again. I don't think it holds up in a funny capacity.
Oh yeah.
It's
I think
like,
that's all of them. They try and throw a couple of funnies in there because it is based off a comic book. Except for I think the Captain Americas were all pretty straightforward.
But the comedy is just comedy that doesn't last. It doesn't.
Right.
It's not clever enough to like repeat.
Right. No.
To be enjoyable like more than once.
Right.
So,
Like the second Sonic movie, which I've
never seen any of the Sonic movies.
It was so bad. Don't waste your time.
I didn't
Both
grow
of
up
them
on
were
Sonic.
terrible. Both of them were terrible. I grew up on Sonic.
Yeah.
One of the things I grew up on.
I actually didn't grow up on most nerd stuff. I had to learn about it in like high school.
I mean, similar, but I had a buddy buddy that grew up 2 doors down, and they were allowed to have comic books. They were allowed to have video games and things like that. I wasn't allowed video games, nothing like that. But I would go over there, and we didn't have AC. So he had AC in the summer times up in Minnesota. So I would
Mhm.
make the excuse, oh, we're just gonna go inside and play like a board game. And we go downstairs and, play Halo. And
you were sneaky.
well, you'd only got so far until my folks figured out what was going on.
Okay.
And then it was, all right, you're only allowed to go in for X amount of time. And then I started, didn't want to listen to that rule because I'd go in for even longer. So then, her or my buddy's mom and then my mom started talking. They're like, all right, we're gonna start forcing the boys to go outside now. So you have to go outside for a certain amount of time. I mean, it's all good and stuff, but
Yeah,
that
no,
was
just-
my experiences as far as nerddom goes growing up.
yeah, I was more surrounded by sports when I was a little kid. So yeah,
Yep.
so that was my more what I had to sort of learn about. I learned about the like Marvel and stuff through the beginning, through like starting with the Avengers really.
Gotcha.
And then I had to go back and stuff like that.
There you go.
So yeah. Any last minute thoughts about the declining MCU?
I mean, it's objectively true that it's declining. That's my
Whether you
can't even have a subjective take on that. There's not even opinion. You can't even make it an opinion. It's
whether you look at money or quality.
correct. Profanity, sensualization, violence, gore, all of it. It's just on a steady decline.
You have broadened my thoughts about what decline means. So
Why?
Good job.
I don't know if I should thank you. Say you're welcome or not on that one, but
well, good job.
thank you. Yeah, I try and it's there for the entertainment, but at the same time, I feel like I get so into it that I overthink sometimes, especially with like the Doctor Strange stuff and the Multiverse of Madness. I'm like, when you start bringing in spells, when you start bringing in witchcraft, when you start bringing in daywalkers and all this other crap and garbage. And
Well,
I'm
the
like,
weird part is it's still
and the only thing that I'm doing while I'm watching these scenes, and I'm like, there's gonna be a pentagram somewhere, and if there's a pentagram, I'm turning it off. I'm like, that's the only thing I can think of.
you know where the first original pentagram comes from, though.
Baphomet.
No, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.
And that rings a bell.
Well, anyways, let's wrap this up. We can talk about that another time.
Wrap it up. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you, Jake. We could talk about nerd stuff forever, and that will be great for future episodes as well. But so thank you for coming on.
You're most welcome. Thank you for having me on.
Love hearing your perspective on anything. So we'll have more of this to come if you're on board.
Sounds good, Connor. Anytime, man.
So thank you all for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And have a wonderful evening. Bye.